Alright, today I'm going to go over a few things to consider while performing the box squat to make sure that you're getting the most out of your box squat and you're performing it correctly. So the first thing you want to consider while performing the box squat is just the box squat height. The first thing you want to decide is what is the depth that I want to achieve and what's the depth that my mobility can allow me to do. So if I'm going a little bit deeper on the squat where I don't necessarily have the hip mobility to achieve, then you might actually end up not getting what you want out of the box squat or even potentially getting injured. So we want to make sure we're getting down to a depth to which our body and hips can handle, a depth that's correct for us, and we want to make sure we stay consistent with that depth until we start to progress down to potentially a little bit lower box where we challenge our mobility just a little bit more. If we have the appropriate mobility, then just staying consistent with a certain depth and just getting really good at that depth. The next thing you want to consider is that the box squat is not necessarily just like a regular free squat. The box squat is going to be a little more hip dominant, and you are going to focus on trying to push your hips back just a little bit more than a traditional squat. So how you're going to set up is a little bit wider and with your toes pointing out. So this is really to try to develop the hips, develop your glutes, and even increase your hip mobility. So one cue I like to use on the box squat is try to sit back first and then squat down. So when you have your bar on your back, the first movement we're going to perform is by pushing your butt back and unlocking the knees. So the first movement is just hips back, bend the knees, and then you're going to come down to your box. Next thing we want to focus on the box squat is how we're actually sitting on the box. Now this is the most butchered or misunderstood aspect of the box squat. The box squat is supposed to be harder than your regular squat. But if you perform the sit incorrectly, it will actually become easier and allow you to think that you're stronger than you actually are. So what I want you to think about while you're sitting on this box is you're not going to rock back, you're going to let your hips settle. So we're essentially going to let all momentum die. We're going to take away that stretch reflex, and then we're essentially coming straight up out of the box. So the first thing I do is just show you what the incorrect way is and what I see what I commonly see when our athletes or other people are squatting and just doing it incorrectly. So what happens is you perform your hips back, knees out, and then you sit down and you let your torso rock back, and then you let your torso rock forward into your squat. Now if you perform it like this, initially you will be able to do a lot more weight. And again, our goal while we're box squatting is to actually make this exercise harder so that when we remove the box, we can actually do more weight. So what I want you to think is you're going to let your hips settle, you're not going to rock back. It's almost like your hips are rocking back. So we're going to perform hips back, knees out, sit. I'm going to keep my torso positioned, and from here I'm going to try to push straight out of it. I'm coming directly up. So I'm not rocking back and rocking forward, I'm just letting my hips settle. So again, to show you, hips back, knees out, let the hips settle, and press straight up. The last thing is going to be our upward fade. So how are we performing this lift or this exercise on the up? So what we've done so far is focus on the down, and we focus on how we're sitting in the box. Now I want to focus on how we're actually coming up out of the box. So coming up out of the box, after we've performed our hips back, knees out, our proper sit on the box, most people tend to still lean forward up out of that box. Now not necessarily, a forward lean is not necessarily a bad thing, but we want to try to keep our torso angle constant throughout the entire lift. So as we're coming down, I have a nice forward lean angle, and as I sit, I want to actually maintain that angle. And then as I'm coming up, what I want you to think about is we're not just standing up, you're pushing directly up into the bar. So I'm pushing directly up into the bar as if my feet were connected to the bar. Is that as if every bit of force in which I push into the ground from my feet is actually pushing directly into the bar through my traps. So again, I'm trying to push up into the bar as I'm coming up, and then my feet are actually trying to push down and out. Okay, so each side is down and out, and as I push down and out, I'm gonna push straight up into the bar and stand up. Thinking of those two cues while you're coming up should help greatly to stop you from getting into that forward lean position on the way up, which is essentially, if we're going to fail a squat, it is going to be from us leaning forward too much or the lower back. That's what's going to give out. So again, push down and out with the feet, and every bit of force in which I'm pushing into the floor is going directly into the bar through my traps. So I'm pushing up into the bar.